of the majority to not silence the voices of those who have historically been marginalized. The rights and perspectives of minorities, women and young people must not only be protected but placed at the center of national decision making. This election season reminds us how vital it is for Bangladesh to restore confidence in democratic processes and to bring an end to the culture of partial elections that erodes public trust. That Bangladesh can once again host open, vigorous debate with participants from around the world is a positive sign for our country and our region. It shows that Bangladesh is ready to engage not from a place of fear, but from a place of confidence, responsibility, and moral clarity about the kind of future it seeks to build. The global environment in which we meet is one of rapid transformation. Strategic competition among major powers has intensified. Supply chains are fragmenting, and the institutions designed to manage global crises are struggling to keep pace. Conflicts in Gaza, Ukraine, and Myanmar have exposed the limits of the international humanitarian system. New technologies are reshaping the nature of truth and trust, and climate change threatens to redraw coastlines and redefine national security across the Bay of Bengal. In this complex environment, Bangladesh cannot remain passive. We must articulate our interests clearly, build partnerships confidently, and pursue a foreign policy rooted in balance, prudence, and long-term strategy. Our theme this year, rivals, ruptures, realignments, reflect this global moment. Rivals speaks to the heightened competition between major powers and the strategic pressures placed on smaller and middle states. Ruptures reflects the breakdowns in trust, information integrity, and multilateral capacity that define our era. Realignments captures the new economic, technological, and diplomatic arrangements emerging as the states look beyond traditional alliances to protect their own futures. These shifts create uncertainty, but they also create opportunity. They allow countries like Bangladesh to redefine themselves not as dependent or vulnerable, but as a confident contributors to regional stability and global dialogue. It is in this spirit of growth and international engagement that I am pleased to share an important development for our institution. Over the past year, as CGS has deepened its global partnerships, it became clear that our work needed a stronger presence in a place where global policy conversations are shaped. Today, I am proud to announce the establishment of CGS USA. This is an independent think tank based in Washington, D.C. CGS USA will expand our research collaborations, engage with policy communities, build academic partnerships, and amplify Bangladeshi scholarship on the international stage. This is a significant milestone in our institutional journey. It reflects our belief that ideas from Bangladesh deserve to travel globally and influence global debate. Moreover, in the coming years, we also plan to go from Washington to the Gulf and Europe as well. Over the next 3 days, the Bay of Bengal conversation will explore how nations navigate an uncertain world. We'll discuss how smaller and middle powers can exercise agency in an age of great power rivalry, what overlapping crises reveal about humanitarian responsibility, how societies can counter the weaponization of information and artificial intelligence without sacrificing democratic freedoms, how countries can build economic resilience in a time of sanctions and de-risking, and how the nations of the Bay of Bengal can confront climate insecurity not as isolated victims but as coordinated partners. These discussions will not produce declarations, and they are not intended to. The strength of this platform lies in its ability to bring together voices that do not often share a stage, to break down formal barriers between diplomacy, scholarship, media, and civil society, and to create understanding that can travel from Dhaka to capitals around the world. As we open the fourth edition of the Bay of Bengal Conversation, I want to acknowledge how we arrived here. We arrived here through persistence, solidarity, and the belief that dialogue is an act of public service. We arrived here because we refused to be silent when silence was safer. And we arrived here because Bangladesh is entering a new chapter defined not by limitation but by possibility. The Bay of Bengal Conversation is now an ecosystem of ideas and community of trust. It stands as evidence that Bangladesh is ready to move beyond the margins and claim its space as a constructive and confident voice in regional and international geopolitics. I thank our friends, partners, sponsors, and well-wishers for walking this journey with us. I thank our distinguished inaugural speaker, the Chief Justice of Bangladesh. I thank our Honorable Foreign Advisor. I thank our distinguished speakers for lending their wisdom to this platform. And I thank all of you for being part of a conversation that grows more meaningful with every passing year. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bay of Bengal Conversation 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. Our next speaker has been an integral part of the Bay of Bengal Conversation since the very beginning. His wisdom, diplomatic lens, and steady engagement over the years have shaped many of the conversations that now define this platform. Mohammad Tawhid Hussain, advisor to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Bangladesh, has long been a friend to BOBC. His continued presence is a testament to the dialogue, openness, and regional cooperation that this conference stands for. Sir, we are honored to have you with us once again. I now invite you to share your remarks.
Honorable Chief Justice of Bangladesh, distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, members of the diplomatic community, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here in Dhaka today. It's an honor to stand before you once more at the Bay of Bengal Initiative conversation. Over the past 3 years, this platform has grown significantly, and I have witnessed its evolution into a space of frank, thoughtful, and timely dialogue. I welcome all participants whose presence underscores the global significance of this region and its challenges. This year's theme, rivals, ruptures, realignments, navigating power and purpose in a disordered world, aptly captures the moment we find ourselves in today. At this very moment, the architecture of international relations is being rewritten. Alliances founded in earlier eras are under strain. New actors and interests are reshaping the map of power. The patterns of yesterday no longer guarantee the outcome of tomorrow. For Bangladesh and for all littoral countries of the Bay of Bengal, there are not distant abstractions, they are concrete, urgent realities. I remember the last time I addressed this gathering as foreign advisor. Our country was emerging from a period of restricted civil space, and the last regime had just been replaced following a significant popular movement. During the first two iterations of the conference under the previous autocratic regime, the Center for Governance Studies and this conference refused to shy away from holding frank and candid opinion about the need for democracy, good governance, transparency, and freedom of speech, holding up the principle that dialogue matters when it is hardest to have. That resilience stands as a testament to what this platform represents, and it is one of the reasons Bangladesh remains deeply committed to it. As foreign advisor, I want to underscore several points of our priorities in this moment of realignment. First, on the shifting geometry of power. Bangladesh insists on its sovereignty and the right to pursue its national interest. In practice, this means that our partnership must deliver tangible benefits, not symbolic only. We will engage with major and middle powers, but our decisions will be guided by national interest, sovereign equality, and mutual respect. The Bay of Bengal region is becoming a strategic fulcrum, and Bangladesh intends to be a confident actor, not a passive corridor only. Second, on the fragmentation of stability. From Ukraine to Gaza, from Sudan to Myanmar, the global system of crisis management has been tested and often found wanting. My country knows the cost of fragility. We have opened the doors to hundreds of thousands of forcibly displaced Rohingyas from Myanmar. We have contributed to UN peace missions, and we know how quickly humanitarian crisis can escalate. Stability is not only a regional concern, it's a global imperative. We must build efficacious multilateral and regional institutions that deliver, not just talk, and an agenda that translates into action. Third, on the weaponization of knowledge. In this age, information is no longer a byproduct of power, it's a tool of power. AI, deepfakes, orchestrated misinformation and disinformation, surveillance, all are reshaping diplomacy, democracy, and governance. Bangladesh stands ready to engage with these themes, to protect our information space, and to promote regulatory frameworks that safeguard both security and rights. Fourth, on economic realignment. Supply chains are fragmented, sanction regimes are multiplied, and de-risking has become a key word for the future of trade. For Bangladesh, this means we must diversify, deepen regional cooperation, and strengthen regional connectivity. We also must ensure that economic partnerships are not predatory, but rooted in mutual opportunity and resilience. We must harness the boundless potential of the Bay of Bengal and turn it into a corridor of growth and prosperity. Fifth, climate, borders, and security in our region. As a low-lying country facing the rising seas, saline intrusion, and migration pressures, Bangladesh is exposed to the risk of global warming, rising sea levels, increased salinity, and internal displacement of population. In this sea and all around it, we must construct cooperative frameworks, share technology and resources, and link our security to our environment. Let this region not just react to climate shocks, but become a leader in climate resilience diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, in moments of realignment, states are tempted to pick sides, but we should first pick the right course. Bangladesh chooses to be an active, sovereign, and responsible player. We will engage robustly, speak firmly when needed, and partner productively, always with an eye on national interest and regional stability. I thank the Center for Governance Studies for organizing this important forum, and I extend thanks to all participants for your commitment to dialogue. I look forward to the conversations, insights, and agreements that will emerge from these days. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Next will be our inaugural speaker, who is a distinguished jurist and one of the most respected voices in Bangladesh legal fraternity. The Honorable Chief Justice Syed Rifat Ahmed has been a guardian of constitutional values, rule of law, and judicial integrity. His work and thought leadership resonate far beyond the courtroom, deeply influencing governance, justice, and democratic resilience. We are privileged to welcome him today. Honorable Chief Justice, the floor is yours.
Honorable President of the Center for Governance Studies, distinguished Advisor for Foreign Affairs, distinguished guests of the Bay of Bengal Conversation, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. We gather today at a moment when the global order is being reshaped with a velocity and unpredictability rarely witnessed in recent decades. Across continents, traditional alliances are shifting, geopolitical geometries are being recalculated, and spheres of influences are redrawn with pragmatic, interest-driven decision. Crises multiply, each overlapping, each eroding our established mechanisms of global crisis management. Knowledge itself has become weaponized in an age where deep fakes distort truth and AI-generated disinformation corrodes democratic deliberation. Economies scramble to strike a balance between internal reform, greater integration in regional common markets, and pragmatic responses to sanctions and debt stress. And here, in the Bay of Bengal, the rising seas and intensifying climate insecurity threaten to redraw borders, reorder security doctrines, and displace millions. These agendas of the Bay of Bengal Conversation 2025 frame not only the global condition, but the environment within which constitutional institutions must now operate. Within this theater of global instability, our own civic awakening of July 2024 stands out as a moment of rare clarity. It compelled Bangladesh to revisit the very grammar of its constitutional life. It reminded every organ of the state that the rule of law is not a bureaucratic ritual, nor an inherited ornamentation. Rather, it is the moral architecture that secures legitimacy in a world where legitimacy itself is fraying. Our Constitution, strikingly, does not define the rule of law. Rather, it gestures toward it. Through rights, through restraints, through the dignity it accords the governed. This is not a deficit. It is a deliberate reminder that the rule of law is a moral reading of the constitutional order, rooted in fairness, reason, and the consent of the people. Ladies and gentlemen, the July Revolution did not propose to overturn the Constitution. Rather, it proposed to purify our engagement with it. Transparency, accountability, and responsiveness. These three virtues became the leitmotif of the public conscience. Yet, the judiciary, as the only fully functional constitutional organ during those uncertain months, was compelled to adopt a posture at once humble and resolute. Humble in acknowledging that it cannot exceed the boundaries of the text that gives it life, and resolute in ensuring that within those boundaries, no right is rendered illusory, no institution made captive, and no citizen abandoned. It is from that vantage point that the September 2024 Judicial Reform Roadmap emerged, an attempt to give structure to a national longing for constitutional normalcy. Over the past months, as we carried this roadmap across the country in a series of unprecedented judicial roadshows, we witnessed something profoundly moving. And that is a judiciary eager to reclaim guardianship over its institutional destiny, and a legal community rediscovering its civic vocation. It is in this spirit that our court has, over the past many months, overturned constitutional misadventures of the past, whether in the attempted burial of the Supreme Judicial Council, the distortions of the 15th Amendment case, or the unresolved echoes of the 13th Amendment review. For the first time in our institutional history, we operationalized a judicial appointment collegium, thereby giving organic life to a long-neglected vision of transparent, reasoned, and consultative judicial appointments process. Ladies and gentlemen, no modern reform of the judiciary in Bangladesh can claim coherence without reference to the landmark Mazda Hussain case. That watershed judgment carved out the constitutional autonomy of the judiciary and laid the groundwork for a professional Leviathan capable of serving as one of the three pillars of the state. Over the past year, we have sought to activate this jurisprudence in earnest, introducing structural reforms in the service, regularizing career pathways, and laying the foundations for the Supreme Court Secretariat Ordinance. These measures are not mere bureaucratic reconfigurations. They are constitutional correctives intended to restore balance, independence, and administrative discipline. But reform, however noble its design cannot survive on architecture alone. It survives on ownership. Ownership by those who must live under its canopy and breathe within its corridors. For months, our labor has been directed at cultivating a constituency of judges, lawyers, and court personnel who participate in reform and identify themselves as custodians of it. In roadshows, seminars, in consultations, in divisional dialogues, we have observed the emergence of a fraternity willing to take charge of its institutional destiny. Distinguished participants, permit me to speak candidly. The continuity of reform is not always guaranteed. Future Supreme Court administrations will inherit not only structures but landscapes. Landscapes that may bear little resemblance to the present transitional moment. Political and constitutional renegotiations may well produce a new social contract, perhaps even a new constitutional order. In such a moment, the judiciary will face its greatest test. That is, how to navigate this larger restructuring without losing the animated spirit of constitutionalism. Vision, wisdom, and courage. These three qualities will determine whether the judiciary remains relevant in a rapidly reconstituting nation. The truth is that the present Constitution, despite its many historical scars, remains the judiciary's only touchstone of legitimacy today. The basic structure doctrine, immutable in essence, but contested in politics, has served over the past year as the compass guiding our course corrections. Whether addressing excesses committed by the executive, legislative distortions force-fed upon the people, or judicial excursions beyond permissible limits, the court has been compelled repeatedly to reassert those entrenched norms that make constitutional life possible. That is, the separation of powers, judicial independence, democratic governance, inalienable fundamental rights, and above all, the sovereignty of the people. Each court constitutional ruling of the past year must therefore be understood as a seed sown in the fertile soil of institutional reform, with the hope that it will engender a sturdier constitutional culture. And yet, here lies the irony. While the court reaffirms the existing constitution as the sheet anchor of transitional justice, the people, endowed with the supreme constituent power, may in time choose to reshape that very constitution. In that scenario, the judiciary must accept this paradox, not as a threat, but as a profound democratic truth. Ladies and gentlemen, if the rule of law has been our internal compass in the transitional moment, judicial diplomacy has become the outward-looking counterpart that strengthens and validates that journey. Having reaffirmed the Constitution as our lodestar and recommitted ourselves to the moral discipline it demands, we have inevitably found that the challenges confronting our judiciary are mirrored across regions and continents undergoing their own ruptures, recalibrations, and democratic reckonings. It is here that judicial diplomacy assumes decisive relevance. No longer as a polite extension of protocol, but as a necessary instrument for institutional learning and survival. Our long-standing engagements with the United Kingdom, the European Union, UNDP, GIZ, and UNICEF have provided continuity and developmental support. Yet, it is through our newer dialogues with Sweden, Norway, Brazil, Egypt, Palestine, Nepal, and Thailand, and the enduring jurisprudential lessons of South Africa on transitional justice, that we have encountered the most vivid illustrations of how judiciaries navigate upheaval, rebuild public trust, and revamp constitutionalism after fracture. These encounters with both traditional and non-traditional partners of the judiciary have enriched our understanding of reform sequencing, the burdens of adjudicating during political transition, and the quiet courage required to uphold constitutional principles when the ground beneath institutions shifts. In this sense, judicial diplomacy is not merely aligned with the theme of this year's Bay of Bengal conversation, it is emblematic of it, offering courts a lifeline of comparative wisdom as we steer our own path through uncertainty, renewal, and the arduous task of re-anchoring a nation to the constitutional rule of law. Dear guests, as Bangladesh prepares for a reimagined political future, perhaps even a reauthored constitutional compact, the judiciary must remain anchored in principle, yet alert to the world's shifting realities. The forces shaping the global and regional order, shifting alliances, crisis multiplication, the weaponization of knowledge, economic fragmentation, and climate insecurity form the strategic ecosystem within which our constitutional commitments must endure. Our task is therefore delicate: to safeguard the integrity of the Constitution as it presently stands, even as we prepare intellectually and institutionally for what the sovereign people may one day choose to create or recreate. If we falter, no architecture of reform, however celebrated, will withstand the corrosive effects of weak governance or geopolitical instability. But if we remain faithful to constitutional morality and the discipline of the rule of law, then this transitional moment will not be remembered as an interlude of uncertainty, but as the beginning of our constitutional renaissance. In an age defined by volatility, it may well be that the judiciary's steadiness, its restraint, its integrity, its courage shall become the nation's most enduring source of stability. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Your Lordship. To conclude the inaugural session, I would now like to invite the Executive Director of the Center for Governance Studies, Mr. Parvez Karim Abbasi. His stewardship and strategic vision guide much of the work that shapes CGS and the Bay of Bengal conversation. Mr. Abbasi will now deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Advisor to Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Chief Justice, Supreme Court Bangladesh, and very dear and again very affectionate President of CGS, my elder brother, Mr. Zilur Rahman, assembled ambassadors, dignitaries, high commissioners, country organization heads, reliable and steady and precious partners, our sponsors, our many speakers who have made their way to Dhaka and have, despite their exacting time schedule, all our participants, friends from the media, all our well-wishers. It gives me immense pleasure as Executive Director, CGS, to give the vote of thanks of inaugural session of Bay of Bengal Conversation 2025. The beauty of my speech is that I have very little time. So I won't have ample platform or the opportunity to make a fool of myself. But before we wrap up, I'd like to draw your attention within the span of the next 2 minutes to some pertinent facts. It gives us immense pride to tell you or share with you a fact which has borne the test of time, that the Bay of Bengal Conversation, or BOBC, which is again the brainchild of CGS, has now matured into the largest track 2 geopolitical dialogue that is held anywhere in South Asia. And I think there's a round of applause. And the credit goes to the entire CGS team. And the vision of Bay of Bengal conversation can be found in the word, two distinct words. One is Bay of Bengal, another one is conversation. If history is to bear witness, the hard to exercising control, whether economic control, military control, especially naval control, is through the Indian Ocean, and that too, again, the critical apex of the Indian Ocean is the Bay of Bengal. Whoever has control over the Bay of Bengal rewrites the destiny of Asia. Whether it was the Arab traders from the 8th century onwards, or later on the Portuguese, the Dutch, our very famous East India Company. So we have a pattern. And Bangladesh sits at the apex of the Bay of Bengal, which is roughly in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And now, as we are steering towards an Asian century, where Asian power emerges once more, and the global scheme of things, the geopolitical order, the economic order, the supply chain order is being contested, where the certainties of the old world order is slowly fading away, at times rapidly vanishing, and the outlines of a new order is still a distant mirage. We are all in a point of transition, in a state of flux. And it is during that time where Bangladesh itself internally is transitioning from an autocracy to hopefully a democracy during a period of stewardship of the interim government. Similarly, the entire order, the world order, is shaken to the core, if not stirred. What we now face are questions about a multipolar world order, adherence to rules-based system, multilateral trading system, and again, should we continue to emphasize issues which we were taught to hold dear, like democracy, rule of law, good governance, inclusivity? And on the other hand, you have the rising specter of populism, short-term gains, dissenting voices being ostracized or marginalized. And again, increasingly, economics, geopolitics, geoeconomics, technology are all merging into one. The divisions are blurred. Old friends, alliances are splitting. Enemies or adversaries are again coming together, which only proves the maxim that again, no friendship or alliance is permanent. Only national interests are. But even the definition of national interests are also permuting. So in this era of flux, there is a need for conversation. And there's a need for conversing from Bangladesh, the best and the brightest in Bangladesh, with the best and the brightest from around the world. And it's an ongoing process where ideas are exchanged, where ideas are debated, and again, over there, new boundaries are pushed. This is a conversation about putting Bangladesh on the map, not in the physical sense, because already the physical map is well established, but in actually outlining what would be Bangladesh's position in the 21st century. And do we realize our manifest destiny? Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude my inaugural speech with a vote of thanks, and I look forward to 3 days of very stimulating cerebral exchange. You're all warmly invited to be a part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abbasi. Ladies and gentlemen, we request everyone to please remain seated as our inaugural speakers take a group photo on stage. Thank you to our distinguished speakers. You may now proceed to exit the stage. For security reasons, our audience is requested to remain seated while the speakers exit. Everyone, please remain seated while the inaugural speaker and a few selected guests are asked to move to Jharna for tea.